Don in London, hello, March 19th. My video is all about recovery from addiction to either substance and behaviour. My addictive substance, alcohol, my behaviour equally addictive around people, places, things. So if it wasn't a drug, alcohol, it was behaviour. Trying to be perfect, trying to be in the right place at the right time with the right people, with the right set of things. So these days, what's the difference? Not trying to be perfect. My needs are met, wants are forgotten. I'm not trying to be perfect, I'm just trying to be one person sober today. So what's helped me along the way to get to sober and stay sober for a little while is family, friends, community to keep me alive long enough, and then a fellowship which keeps me on track as best one can be in these difficult times with help. And that fellowship, which makes my life possible, doesn't make it possible, it makes life worth living. That is the fellowship of AA, a contrary bunch of people who are unique and authentic, each person unique and authentic, developing their own outlook with freedom today. So that fellowship is AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. And what is it? Well, I'll share the AA preamble here first, and then a reading or something about a particular step in the 12-step program of recovery. So first, what is AA? Well, first and foremost, I don't speak for it. AA never can, never will. Those contrary, unique and authentic people speak for themselves where they will. They're not all contrary, they're just like-minded around one similarity, and this is why. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. That's it. The only requirement, a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution. Does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. So if you're looking for AA to fix you as a quick fix, it won't work. If you're looking to be fixed, well, we've all done that in the past with alcohol or drugs. So why is AA different? Well, simply, it's an emotional, spiritual program. Emotional in the sense that we want our feelings to work and that they fit the day we have. So if our feelings fit our experience, then we're halfway there. And the spiritual element is what you make of it. Many people understand a definition of spiritual to be coping with what's happening right now, being able to cope with reality, live in the day, live in the moment, be a part of life, not controlling it or directing it. Freedom of choice given how life is today. So emotional and spiritual. It's not about being fixed, it's about living reality. How it works is how we learn life can work on a daily basis. So we're never any better than what we are in one day, which also means we're all the same size, in the same time, in the same moment, trying to make life work or live life as it is. When I can't get to meetings, and because I was asked to do these videos for people who cannot get to meetings or just simply cannot take everything in a meeting, because I couldn't for years, my listening skills were crap. I've improved a little bit over the years. So I share the daily readings or daily reflections in this book today from March 19th, and this is what it says. And March is about step 3 for me, and it's about letting go and letting good things happen, no matter what your faith happens to be. So it talks about prayer, it works. It has been well said that almost the only scoffers at prayer are those who have never tried it enough. So if we pray enough, something might happen. What I do know is if we pray for self-interest and self-opinion and being right, it won't work. If we pray for things to do with being a part of and hoping and sharing what would be the right path forward, not just for myself, but for everybody who I encounter on a daily basis, they have a bit of a chance of working. So here's what it says. Having grown up in an agnostic household, I felt somewhat foolish when I first tried praying. I knew there was a higher power working in my life. How else was I staying sober? But certainly I wasn't convinced he, she or it wanted to hear my prayers. People who had what I wanted said prayer was an important part of practicing the program, so I persevered. With a commitment to daily prayer, I was amazed to find myself becoming more serene and comfortable with my place in the world. In other words, life became easier and less of a struggle. I'm still not sure who or what listens to my prayers, but I've never stopped saying them for that simple reason, that they work. So if we pray that we find our place in our community, our family, just being a part of, included, not necessarily in control of everything, but in control of the choices open to us given the particular situation on any particular day. It's like saying, dear God, please help me fit in and develop my freedoms around what is possible and what is not possible. So rather than wanting and wanting and wanting, just saying, dear God, help me cover my needs today. And that starts to work. And it's truly amazing, because it does, because we're asking how do we fit in today, rather than isolating, getting mad, angry and ready for a relapse, and we can relapse on our feelings as much as anything else by saying, I want it my way. I want to be a doctor, a dentist, a member of parliament, in charge of the world, all impossible wants, because there's no pathway to getting there. So if we actually said, dear God, start to help me see a pathway to what I aspire to, what is the first step? And the first step always for me is, let's pray for a sober day, how I may be included, and investigate and find out what is possible to be included and have choices today. So it's about realism. Prayers are about realism, and if they're done in a routine way at particular times of day, as many people do because it's part of their faith and their religion, then they start to get clarity of purpose. And what is important to a human being? To love, be loved, and have clarity of purpose. So sober, if we stay sober as a primary desire to be stopped from drinking, pray for a sober day, that we may engage in life, then we have a chance. 12 and 12, this book, is, I'm going to read step 3. I feel it's important to read it more than once in a month. And I cover a step a month in my videos and other things as well. So step 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. And I don't know quite where I am with anything to do with belief. It sort of works itself out on a daily basis. And often I am guided in my beliefs by my experience of life. So over the years, agnostic, atheist, God believer, and it can change. From there is a God to there can be no God in this particular world where things look this way. But one thing I do know, I am not it. And that's a good starting point. It's not me. So there's a big picture out there where I fit in, like a jigsaw piece in a jigsaw puzzle. And we are all interdependent. And if we look at it levelly and equally, we have a better chance. So, step 3. Practicing step 3 is like the opening of a door which to all appearances is still closed and locked. All we need is a key and the decision to swing the door open. There is only one key, and it's called willingness. Once unlocked by willingness, the door opens of itself. And looking through it, we shall see a pathway beside which is an inscription. It reads, "This is the way to a faith that works." In the first 2 steps we were engaged in reflection. We saw that we were powerless over alcohol, but we also perceived that faith of some kind, if only in AA itself, is possible to anyone. These conclusions did not require action, they required only acceptance. There is a pathway, it says here, There is the way to a faith that works, and it's a unique and authentic take that we develop to a way of living with faith in our lives. Faith in doing the right thing, faith in listening to other people, faith in being a part of, included, faith that we can love other people, we can be loved back, and that we can be useful. So if it starts on that basis, just a very basic level of understanding, which may be all that is required of us, because not knowing and saying I don't know means that we are open to the world and all the possibilities. So we can make our minds up as we go. We don't have to lay a rule of law down about what is faith. Continuing, like all the remaining steps, step 3 calls for affirmative action, for it is only by action that we can cut away the self-will which has always blocked the entry of God, or, if you like, a higher power into our lives. And my higher power is truth, love and wisdom of others. Faith, to be sure, is necessary, but faith alone can avail nothing. We can have faith yet keep God out of our lives. Therefore our problem now becomes just how and by what specific means shall we be able to let him in. Step 3 represents our first attempt to do this. In fact, the effectiveness of the whole AA program will rest upon how well and earnestly we have tried to come to a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. And when it says as we understood him, it still remains a personal belief around faith, and that we are not God, and that we need input, we need help to fit in, and how to learn to be loved and loved back and useful. And this is not me undermining anybody's faith and religious belief. It's what the fellowship says is, please retain your faith and religion and your belief, because it's obviously part of what life is all about. Continuing, to every worldly and practical minded beginner this step looks hard, even impossible, because we have to overcome our own prejudice about any sort of faith. And believe you me, at the end of my drinking I had no faith in anything, least of all me. No matter how much one wishes to try, exactly how can he turn his will and his own life over to the care of whatever God he thinks there is? Fortunately, we who have tried it, and with equal misgivings can testify that anyone at all, can begin to do it. We can further add that at beginning, even the smallest is all that is needed. Once we have placed the key of willingness in the lock and have the door ever so slightly open, we can find that we can always open it wider. Though self-will may slam it shut again, as it frequently does, it will always respond the moment we pick up the key of willingness. Willingness to be included, part of, and listening to what life can offer us. Not saying, I will it so, self-will or self-obsession that I ought and should be doing this. Continuing, maybe this all sounds mysterious and remote. Something like Einstein's theory of relativity, or a proposition in nuclear physics. It isn't at all. Let's look at how practical it actually is. Every man and woman has joined AA and intends to stick has, without realizing it, made a beginning on step 3. Isn't it true that in all matters touching upon alcohol, each of them has decided to turn his or her life over to the care, protection and guidance of Alcoholics Anonymous? And don't forget, Alcoholics Anonymous is the people you see in meetings. What you see is what you get. So some people are good, some people are bad, some people are indifferent, but some people just cherish life and are finding a way to make it work one day at a time. And within the fellowship we say stick with the winners. So don't forget, groups of people who meet in AA on any given day can have a bad day from time to time, if not every other day. So we look at what is happening, the experience, strength and hope of other people when they encounter difficulty as much as it's all joyful and success. So when people say I've never had a bad day in AA, they probably haven't been in AA long enough. No. It could be like that, but you just have to use your own good judgment as it starts to grow, listening and opening up to the world and the wisdom there is around us. Already a willingness has been achieved to cast out one's own will and one's own ideas about the alcohol problem in favour of those suggested by AA. Any willing newcomer feels sure AA is the only safe harbour for the foundering vessel he has become. Now, if this is not a turning point, if this is not turning one's will and one's life over to a newfound providence, then what is it? And it is like that. It is a newfound providence, because we're encountering people on a daily basis. Like I say, what you see is what you get. Some people in turmoil but still sober, some people completely serene and nothing is happening, although they may be peaceful and joyful inside, and they are all right. It's what is going on around us, turning ourselves over to the care of good conscience, the wisdom of others, listening for the good that people are sharing in their wisdom. But suppose that instinct still cries out, as it certainly will, yes, respecting alcohol, I guess I have to be dependent upon AA. But in all other matters I must still maintain my independence. Now when it says I have to be dependent upon AA, I prefer to say interdependent on the people I meet on a daily basis, and I can choose the winners. And I can take notice of those who are having difficult times and why they're having difficult times. So it's a really good information exchange. Nothing is going to turn me into a non-entity. If I keep on turning my life and my will over to the care of something or somebody else, what will become of me? I'll look like a hole in the donut. This, of course, is the process by which instinct and logic always seek to bolster egotism. Or rather, I can stand on my own 2 feet, put on a brave face, and bugger you lot. And so frustrate spiritual development, which is about, I don't need to stand on my own 2 feet, I can link arms with other people, I'm not going to tell you to bugger off, and I don't know the answers. So, opening ourselves up is really important. And I don't mind looking like a hole in the donut, as long as I have something to put in the hole in the donut. This, of course, is the process by which instinct and logic always seek to bolster egotism, and so frustrate spiritual development. And spiritual development is being able to live in the moment of now. The trouble is that this kind of thing takes no real account of the facts, and the facts seem to be these. The more we become willing to depend upon a higher power, the more independent we actually are. In other words, we get our freedom of choice back, and we are independent and of thinking and feeling. Independent of thinking and feeling, at the same time we are interdependent in this interdependent world. Therefore, dependence as AA practices it is really a means of gaining true independence of the spirit, which is the freedom to understand the life we have as best we can, where we are right now, and what we may do. Let's examine for a moment this idea of dependence at the level of everyday living. In this area, it is startling to discover how dependent we really are, and how unconscious of that dependence. Every modern house has electric wiring carrying power and light to its interior. We are delighted with this dependence. Our main hope is that nothing will ever cut off the supply of the current. By so accepting our dependence upon this marvel of science, we find ourselves more independent personally. Not only are we more independent, we are even more comfortable and secure. Power flows just where it is needed, silently and surely. Electricity, that strange energy so few people understand, meets our simplest daily needs, and our most desperate ones too. As the polio sufferer confined to an iron lung who depends with complete trust upon a motor to keep the breath of life in him. And as we've seen in recent times with Japan and the catastrophe and cataclysmic events, people are starving because what we took for granted is not working, and there is no real understanding of how to put it right in one day. Anyway, yes, I'm sorry about that, but it's true. We do take for granted what works, and it's only when things go wrong, by exception, that we suddenly realise just how interdependent we all are. But the moment our mental or emotional independence is in question, and this is on a personal level, mental or emotional independence, how differently we behave. How persistently we claim the right to decide all by ourselves just what we shall think and just how we shall act. Oh yes, we'll weigh the pros and cons of every problem. We'll listen politely to all those who would advise us, but all the decisions are to be ours alone. Nobody is going to meddle with our personal independence in such matters. Besides, we think there is no one we can really or can surely trust. We are certain that our intelligence, backed by willpower, can rightly control our inner lives and guarantee us success in the world we live in. This brave philosophy, wherein each man plays God, sounds good in the speaking, but it still has to meet the acid test. How well does it actually work? One good look in the mirror ought to be the answer enough for any alcoholic. So when I looked in the mirror as an alcoholic in active addiction, all I saw was a man broken, unable to stop drinking, and still fighting himself, trying to use self-will, putting off the hour when he might start drinking until there was no hour when I might not stop. I just kept on going 24/7. And I was broken because of it. So independent will, self-will run riot, self-obsession. I couldn't see past what was in that glass, or bottle, because I dispensed with glasses completely. Should his own image in the mirror be too awful to contemplate, and it usually is, he might first take a look at the results normal people are getting from self-sufficiency. Everywhere he sees people filled with anger and fear, society breaking up into warring factions. Each fragment says to the others, we are right and you are wrong. Every such pressure group, if it is strong enough, self-righteously imposes its will upon the rest, and everywhere the same thing is being done on an individual basis. The sum of all this mighty effort is less peace and less brotherhood than before. The philosophy of self-sufficiency is not paying off. Plainly enough, it is a bone-crushing juggernaut. It is a bone-crushing juggernaut whose final achievement is ruin. And harking to recent events, Libya, right now, where one person says it's my way or the highway, God knows what the outcome is going to be. But a lot of people are acting in good faith, interdependently, to try bring about peace. And for the first time in many, many years, the United Nations, even though five member states did veto it, the rest have said we need to sort it out, not to put our troops on the ground or occupy the space that is there. And this is really off AA, but I'm going to share it anyway. A group of nations said we need to help the people who are being massacred. No matter who is doing it, it needs to stop. Either side. That's what it says. So working in unison for a common good, to preserve life. And, AA is exactly the same on a different scale with a different reason. People who are alcoholics are dying. So in the big picture of life, where we say let's work together to try and find peace, it's not people waving big sticks and then coming to power and saying I'm in charge. For the last century it's been proved anybody who waves a big stick and comes to power, and it eventually loses it or dies. So same applies on an individual basis for me. I'm just making the personal analogy for me, and again I don't speak for anyone else when I make those analogies. If I tried to rule the world, I'd get shot. If I went back to drinking and tried to stop on my own, I know I couldn't do it before, and what on earth would make me feel that I could do it on my own? Coming back to what it says in the AA tradition, step 3, and I do apologise if anybody finds this erroneous, these comparisons. I'm sure there are plenty that you can find for yourselves, but this is me talking about me and my outlook, not me talking about AA's outlook, because there isn't an AA outlook. It doesn't have an opinion on anything. It's just people getting together to stay sober. And I keep on emphasising this because nobody can tell you what to do, but I listen out for good advice, the wisdom of others. Continuing, therefore we who are alcoholics can consider ourselves fortunate indeed. Each of us has had his own near-fatal encounter with the juggernaut of self-will, and has suffered enough under its weight to be willing to look for something better. So it is by circumstance rather than by any virtue that we have been driven to AA, have admitted defeat, and have acquired the rudiments of faith, and now want to make a decision to turn our will and our lives over to a higher power. And I emphasize again, it's the power that you understand is your higher power. In other words, I'm not God, I'm not the higher power. I'm looking out for experience, strength and hope which will bolster my understanding of how to live this one day. We realise that the word dependence is as distasteful to many psychiatrists and psychologists as it is to alcoholics, because the reason why psychiatrists and psychologists don't like the word dependence is because it means that we can return to self-determination, which in the alcoholic becomes self-determination, self-will, self-obsession and disaster, relapse again. So just to make it clear, I understand the program is not about me being dependent, it's about me being interdependent in a world of interdependent factors, namely people, places and things. So it's not about me being returned back into control, which is why a lot of therapy does not work and continues for years without success. It suggests that man's free will put him back in charge of his own faculties. And if we try and do that on our own, which is often the case one-to-one, and then we're left to our own devices for the rest of the week, after an hour of consultation or therapy, we don't relate it to the world. We don't return to interdependence. We return to judging the world not being good enough for us. So I have a lot of sympathy for psychiatrists and psychologists who are out there thinking that all their therapy is going to help a person put themselves back in charge. It don't work, in my humble opinion. And again, I'm off the piece here, but anyway, this is me this morning. I don't know what's up with me. Nothing actually. I think it's the sun. Like our professional friends, we too are aware there are many wrong forms of dependence. We have experienced many of them. No adult man or woman, for example, should be in too much emotional dependence upon a parent. They should have been weaned long ago, or long before, and if they have not been, they should wake up to the fact. This very form of faulty dependence has caused many a rebellious alcoholic to conclude that dependence of any sort must be intolerably damaging. The dependence upon an AA group, what you see is what you get on a daily basis, good and bad, or upon a higher power, the power of your understanding, where you say, please God, give me the strength to listen and find out what is the right path, hasn't produced any baleful results, unless you're complaining that the higher power isn't working for you. In other words, who do you work for? Or who are we working with? When World War II broke out, this spiritual principle had its first major test. AAs entered the services and were scattered all over the world. Would they be able to take discipline, stand up under fire, and endure the monotony and misery of war? Would the kind of dependence they had learned in AA carry them through? Well, it did. They had even fewer alcoholic lapses or even emotional binges than AAs safe at home did. They were just as capable of endurance and valour as any other soldiers. Whether in Alaska or on the Salerno beachhead, their dependence upon a higher power worked. And far from being a weakness, this dependence was their chief source of strength, working interdependently to get a result. And another sort of footnote for me would be, what is PSTD, post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. You can see my dyslexia coming up. Post-traumatic stress disorder, where we've had people under fire for years now, both sides, completely traumatised for year upon year upon year. They are living beyond the pale, and we need to help them. And often people turn to drink in those situations and are having a struggle just to see a point in life. That's my footnote. It doesn't mean everybody with PTSD is going to become an alcoholic or a drug user. But what it means is the absolute breaking down of a human being over years and years of trauma. It is going to take years and years of time helping them get back together again. Continuing from the book. So how exactly can the willing person continue to turn his will and his life over to the higher power? He made a beginning, we have seen, when he commenced to rely upon AA for the solution of his alcohol problem. By now, though, the chances are that he has become convinced that he has more problems than alcohol, and that some of these refuse to be solved by all the sheer personal determination and courage he can muster. They simply will not budge. And actually, it's our sheer personal determination and courage to keep on trying to do it our way which gets in the way of recovery, because we can't hear and see and join in with what's working for other people. They make him desperately unhappy and threaten his new sobriety. Our friend is still victimized by remorse and guilt when he thinks of yesterday. Bitterness still overpowers him when he broods upon those he still envies or hates. His financial insecurity worries him sick, and panic takes over when he thinks of all the bridges to safety that alcohol burns behind him. And how shall he ever straighten out that awful jam that cost him the affection of his family and separated him from them? His lone courage and unaided will cannot do. Surely he must now depend upon somebody or something else. And this also applies to trauma. The trauma of alcoholism is often years and years of nightmares, of trying to stop, and then the nightmares keep on returning in recovery, in early recovery, because we are reminded over and over again in our dreaming and day-to-day living, because after all there is a bar, a pub, a restaurant, all there on the sidewalk, on the pathway of life, all with booze in them. So how on earth do we ever get to a point where we don't even notice it? Well, I can only assure you that over the time in early recovery, those fears were real to me for a short time at the beginning, and then we don't forget drink. This is the reason why we go to meetings and keep on hearing experience, strength and hope. It's a daily reprieve. We're not looking for an absolute fix for a lifetime. There is no such thing on anything. It's a daily reprieve. Yes. And continuing, at first that somebody is likely to be his closest AA friend. He relies upon the assurance that his many troubles, now made more acute because he cannot use alcohol to kill the pain, can be solved too. Of course, the sponsor points out that our friend's life is still unmanageable even though he is still sober, but after all only a bare start on AA's program has been made. More sobriety brought about by the admission of alcoholism and by attendance at a few meetings is very good indeed, but it is bound to be a far cry from permanent sobriety and a contented, useful life. So when we've been fractured and broken and stuck in a horrible place for a long time, there is no overnight cure and there is no overnight fix. Not only is our human chemical makeup changed and needs time to recover, all the other things that are going on in our lives are there too. So sustainable recovery does require attention on a daily basis, not to the point of abstract, I don't know what the words are, not replacing one addiction with another, I guess. It's about freedom, learning how to be free in our movement and to let go. Of course, our sponsor points out that our friend's life is still unmanageable, even though he is sober, that after all, only a bare start on AA's program has been made. More sobriety brought about by the admission of alcoholism and by attendance at a few meetings is very good indeed, but it is bound to be a far cry from permanent sobriety and a contented, useful life. That is just where the remaining steps of the AA program come in. Nothing short of continuous action upon these as a way of life can bring the much desired result. So step 3 is the starting point into action. Then it is explained that the other steps of AA program can be practiced with success only when step 3 is given a determined and persistent trial. That is, letting go self-will, letting go the idea that we know best, and letting in what is best, what will work today. This statement may surprise newcomers who have experienced nothing but constant deflation and a growing conviction that human will is of no value whatever. Well, self-will, determined to do one's best and find the free choices as life is on life's terms, is absolutely fine, based on reality. They have become persuaded, and rightly so, that many problems besides alcohol will not yield to a headlong assault powered by the individual alone. Yes, interdependent, fact-finding, involvement, inclusion, all those things. But now it appears that there are certain things which only the individual can do, all by himself, and in the light of his own circumstances. He needs to develop the quality of willingness, and the program is about being open, honest and willing. When he acquires willingness, he is the only one who can make the decision to exert himself. So willingness on a daily basis. Please let me be open to what the world has on offer. Please let me get out there into the sunshine today and meet people, because that's what I like doing. Trying to do this when he acquires willingness, he is the only one who can make the decision to exert himself, in other words, put in the action. Trying to do this as an act of his own will. All of the 12 steps require sustained and personal exertion to conform to their principles, and so we trust to God's will. And for me, the wisdom of others, God works through people, it's the wisdom of others and letting it in and being trusting, and then learning that our judgment is not quite so cockeyed as we thought it was, that we can start to learn to trust our judgment, not being judgmental, but judging what is right for us. It is when we try to make our will conform with God's that we begin to use it rightly. So, wisdom of others, life on life's terms, letting the world in to the possibilities of what we could be. To all of us, this was a most wonderful revelation. Our whole trouble had been the misuse of willpower. So, the misuse of willpower. We had tried to bombard our problems with it instead of attempting to bring it into agreement with God's intention for us. So whether we call it nature, providence, the universe, or living life on life's terms, spiritual is living reality. Everything is spiritual. And if it's not spiritual, it's la-la land or dreamland often. Because when a person feels that they have a better spiritual take on life than another, that is a great big misunderstanding. So often I say there are no gurus in life. And I'm certainly no guru, because I keep on having to learn life on a daily basis. But you know what? I'm in the same boat with the same people, same size, hopefully right sized, with my ears on, using my 5 senses, so that life can work. And it continues. We have tried to bombard our problems with it instead of attempting to bring it into agreement with God's intention for us. To make this increasingly possible is the purpose of AA's 12 steps. And step 3 opens the door. So step 1, we know life is unmanageable, and if we take a drink, we're stuffed. Step 2 is coming to believe that a higher power could restore us to sanity. And in early days, we have no clue, really, if anybody's mad or sane around us. But don't forget, some people hang on to the idea that it's good to be mad. And actually that's quite difficult to get round, because it then means they're living in their defects of character, and they forgive everything they do, while the rest of the world is judging them for their malfeasance. Just means wrongdoing. To make this clear, once we've come into agreement with these ideas, it is really easy to begin practice of step 3. In all times of emotional disturbance or indecision, we can pause, ask for quiet, and in the stillness simply say, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Thy will, not mine, be done. So it's not my way or the highway, it's thy way and the highway. And when I say, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, it is, I can't change things. Courage to change the things I can. Often it's just simply my attitude and behaviour. And the wisdom to know the difference, maybe I have to ask other people, what is the wisdom today? Anyway, enough of me. March 19th. And may your God go with you.